This episode contains mentioned content that may be not what some listeners want to hear today. We are talking about the surgical field, and that comes with discussions of blood, organs, anything that may be related to the surgical side of things. We do talk about death in this episode. We do talk about fetal demise in this episode. And there is a section where we do talk about suicide and just things of that nature. And if that is not something you want to hear today, or you just don't want to listen to that today, that is totally fine. We will have an episode for you next week, and we have an entire backlog if you would like to enjoy that. But just wanted to give you a heads up so it's not a unwelcome surprise if that is not what you want to hear today. So if you do feel comfy cozy with listening to stuff about that today, here's the episode. It was February 10th, 2023. Romi had put out a call-out post on TikTok saying, "Hey, stitch this video and tell me about something you're excited about, and then I will do edits and learn about said thing." And one of the individuals who had stitched that video was none other than Jennifer. Jennifer is a surgical technologist and told Romi about the wildest shit ever. So Romi privately messaged Jennifer and said, "That shit's crazy. Tell me more." And Jennifer said, "Absolutely, but we should do it during Surgical Technologists Week." And that is this week. And here is where it all began.
Oh, hello.
Hi,
Hello.
my name is Jen.
Hi, Jen.
I am a surgical technologist. For the better part of 5 years, I scrubbed hearts and vascular.
Ayo.
And for the most part, I did scrub other things, but that was my primary focus. But now I work in the world of organ
Hell yeah.
procurement.
What does that mean?
So yeah, feel free to message
I have
me.
questions. What is organ procurement?
Hello and welcome to the Hyperfixation, where our friends come onto our show and tell us about things they're excited about for 30 to 45 minutes or longer, because who cares? The timer is a lie. My name is Roma. I use the they and them pronouns, and today we have a groundbreaking, earth-shattering, what's the word I'm looking for? We got a wild new brand, flavor, type of topic today for you all. And that is going to be told to us by the amazing, the wonderful Jennifer.
Yay, me.
Hello.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here and to just nerd out about my profession.
Heckin' yes. And you use the she, her pronouns?
Yes, I do.
Perfect. And so I'm very excited for today's episode. Listeners at home, when you all may remember the time frame where the Hyperfix TikTok popped off out of nowhere, out of left field, and and so a lot of brand new people, brand new listeners were coming towards the show, and I was very excited. But one in particular, which is our friend Jennifer here, did a duet of a call out where I was like, "Hey, like, give me a quick info dump of things you're excited about on TikTok." And this was months ago. I want to say like earlier in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I want to say like, it feels like May-ish, but
That sounds about right.
time is also a construct and hasn't. So
Time is a construct. And so you and I messaged, and I was like, "I want you to come on the show and talk to me about this." And you had mentioned that the perfect time would be this week, as we speak, as of release of the show right now is not the perfect week, but as of release, it will be.
It will.
It'll be Surgical Technicians Week.
Technologists.
Technologists.
Yes.
Thank you. And so I put it on my calendar and I messaged you on the Tiki Talkies. Well, you also messaged me, but we chatted back and forth and we made today happen.
Yes. And I'm so excited.
Me too. Oh my goodness. So, but there's a history to how you got to this point, today. So let's begin with what do you do for a living?
So I am a certified surgical technologist. Not many people know about us in the OR. We are the ninjas of the OR. We are the guardians of the sterile field. For people who may watch TV like in Grey's Anatomy, we are the Bokies of the world. We also are known as scrub techs. Some people will call us scrub nurses, and that is not correct. We are not nurses. There are nurses who scrub, but a surgical technologist is a surgical technologist. There's my plug.
Hey.
And we get and there's a national certification that we do. Certain states require registration, and that's something that AST, the Association of Surgical Technologists, is working on to get more states requiring registration to make it even safer for patients. And we open the sterile field. We make sure that we have all the instruments and supplies that the surgeon needs for the surgery. And we hand them the instruments during the surgery. Depending on where someone's working, they may get to assist the surgeon or retract things during surgery. And yeah, we also do the most important part of surgery, which is counting, to make sure that nothing gets left in the patients.
You know, there's a lot of things that I don't think about. I mean, I've never had like surgery of that nature, so I guess it's never been something that crossed my mind. But that is quite the thought to have of like, hey, I weigh a little extra than I did before.
Right. Well, and then like when you see it on Grey's Anatomy, and it was like the very first one I remember. This is before I even thought about working in surgery as a profession. I remember seeing the episode and being like, oh my God, how could they leave something in there? And then I actually get to the profession and I see some of the things that we're working with that are like sometimes literally on a microscopic level. And I'm like, okay, I can see how it happens. I hope that, never happens to me. And it hasn't. So,
hey, you get a gold star.
Yay.
Gold star.
To be fair, I've only been practicing for 8 years. So,
hey, practice makes perfect. So you get 2 gold stars.
Ooh.
So you've been doing this for 8 whole years.
Yes.
What led you into this profession prior to these 8 years?
Roller derby.
Yeah.
So I have always kind of wanted to be in the medical field. I was actually going to go, initially I was going to be a doctor. And then I took organic chemistry and said, fuck this. Oh, can we curse? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Fuck yeah, we can.
Yes. So, and then I ended up having to drop out and become a real adult for a while. Worked at a call center job that was just killing my soul, and stumbled into roller derby. And I met someone who was a surgical technologist. We got talking at an after party, and that's the end of that. And the start of my new career.
That's nutty. Yeah. I kind of feel that like accidental happenstance into your career. I wanted to be an artist, and then people told me that artists don't make money. And so I went to business school and was going to be specializing in
the opposite extreme.
I was like, well, I could learn art on my own. I want to be able to afford to do art. And now I'm like, man, if I would have went to art school, it would have been fine.
It would have been great.
It would have been fine. But I went for entrepreneurship so I could help people start small businesses. And the what's the word I'm looking for? The professor that made that major worth it quit. And of course, to me, and I had other seniors in that major were like, get out now. And so I was like, well, what do I do? And my guidance counselor was like, you could do economics. And I'm like, I guess I could do that. And got in economics, but was still doing marketing. I was doing marketing. My art put me into marketing. And I said, I hate this. I hate using my art to sell for capitalism in this nature. And then I found myself in finance.
Oh my.
It's weird. So all because of, one person said, I like that bachelor's degree of yours. Do you want to sell securities?
Right.
I'm like, I guess.
Fun fact, I am 2 math classes away from like a minor degree in math.
Congratulations.
I'm never gonna get them.
No?
No. Mm-mm. I only took all that math because I was going to be a doctor.
Oh, true.
And I wanted to like look good on my resume. So.
Well, if you ever feel like it, it's only a couple $1,000s away.
Well, I'm potentially looking at a master's degree, which we can talk about later because it's probably going to end up coming up on the top train.
Ooh, sounds good to me. Let's see. So I have one last question, and then I think we can run loose and run wild. And then I'll ask questions intermittently here and there. But so you've been in this field for 8 years. Is there something particularly like exciting and interesting about your job that you love? Like, for example, I really like what's the word I'm looking for? I like my current job because I can help people, but it's also a good brain tickle with like problem solving. So I don't know if there's anything of that nature or anything you just find really neat. Like this particular tool I use is just fun. I don't know.
I love the fact that I'm doing something different. If not every day, every couple of hours potentially. And I love the fact that there's always something to learn. Like I worked at a level 1 trauma transplant center for several years, and there's always residents and students and PAs. And like, if you just sit there and listen, you learn so much. And it's just absolutely wild.
Oh, I bet. And then you got so many different kinds of people in there, different education levels, different departments.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's like, I've seen, I found my way into, I guess I'll call it nurse or maybe hospital side of TikTok where they do like the story times and stuff. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. It's a very interesting department of the algorithm.
I don't.
It's like somebody who most definitely is or has been some sort of like nurse in the ER or somewhere along those lines. And they'll kind of retell a funny TikTok-sized version of something that may have happened to them or like a submitted story. And there's just some wild things in there that, for example, like, oh, they put what up their butt? Or, which is like, a famous one.
Mm-hmm.
Or, this person has this problem. I don't know what to do. And they go ask like the veteran nurse in their department. And the nurse is like, this is what you do. It's very straightforward. And they're like, really? I never would have thought that.
Oh no, I'm on like the nurse, like activist, or like news side. And then like, there's a whole bunch of doctors I follow.
That's cool.
And some med students and residents and stuff. I'm on that side of TikTok.
The more informative side that I'm on.
Which, I mean, is going to happen because, I mean, that's literally my profession.
That's true. Oh my goodness. Actually, I think this might be a good jumping point.
Okay.
If you're ready to begin, let me get that timer. Let me get the timer out. I really just like looking at it at this point.
Okay. I want to say, I don't know if you want to like how detailed you want me to get.
I'd actually be interested to hear some of your personal experiences, like actively on the job. Like, is there, I guess I want to start with maybe like a good lighthearted one. I don't know. I'm very unfamiliar with your field, so forgive me if my questions aren't like on point.
No, you're totally fine. Here's the thing about the OR is that it's such a weird, like self-insulated environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I always, whenever we have guests in the OR, like from the outs, like from other departments or whatever, or students, I always like chit chat them up. I'm like, hey, have you ever been in an OR before? Like, what's your experience? And I'll give them the rundown. And these are my personal 3 rules of the OR. The first rule is you don't touch anything blue because all the sterile supplies are blue. And then the second rule is that if you get yelled at, there's a 98% chance that it wasn't actually anything you did and that it's just the tension of the moment. Like, but yelling actually also rarely happens. But then the third one, I always tell them that the OR is like Vegas. What happens here stays here because we have very weird conversations and it's just a wild ride. And I'm just trying to think of like one of the first ones, like fun ones that pops up in my mind. It was in the like 2 or 3 in the morning. We had gotten called back for bleeding. This was when I was working on the heart team. And we just got called back. A patient was just bleeding excessively to where we needed to come back and be like, where is this coming from? And we got everything taken care of. The patient was getting sent back up and I was starting to get the room cleaned. And in the hospital I worked at the time, we used these warming blankets called Gamar blankets. And basically you hook them up to this machine and it flows warm fluid through them. And
nice.
You can also use cool fluid if the need arises.
Yeah.
But the thing with these is if you have to clamp them before you unhook them from the machine. And at 2 or 3 in the morning, I was already tired because I'd been working all day and then I got called back in the middle of the night and I forgot to clamp them before I undid the machine. And of course, this part, of course, happened. I was completely alone in the room. So I unhooked the blanket from the machine. Water squirts everywhere, directly on my pants, making it look like I peed myself.
Oh no.
And that's when the surgeon walks back in.
No. Damn it.
Right. Luckily, this surgeon was one of my favorite surgeons to work with. And he honestly just looked at me, get kind of like smirked and giggled and like walked out.
You didn't even get to explain it.
No.
No. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was good times.
Goodness. Yeah, I can only imagine. Like, there's been we've all had our share of watching hospital dramas. I think I haven't actually sat and watched Grey's Anatomy, but I've seen clips. I'm sure if my partner Tony, he's in the living room right now, he's watched so much Grey's Anatomy, so I'm sure he would be like, yeah.
I was like, bring him in if he asks me questions.
Yeah, and then I've seen a good chunk of clips specifically of The Good Doctor on my TikTok feed. So there's some chunks of that, but I don't know if you've seen it or not.
I haven't. I actually haven't even watched Grey's Anatomy since, I don't know, I think it was still single digit seasons, maybe. Because it is so inaccurate that I cannot watch it. I just immediately judge all of the surgical stuff, and it's not great. The thing is they have an actual surgical scrub nurse who is in all of the surgical scenes. The actress who plays Boki in Grey's Anatomy is an actual scrub nurse.
Hold on. I pulled up the Grey's Anatomy cast, so now I have to figure out which ones. I don't know who is who.
She's just a little Asian lady. She's not even like a character in the show. She just gets called by name sometimes, and now everybody knows her and loves her.
Oh, I love that. Actually, I have a good segue. It's still in the same department.
Mm-hmm.
So before recording, you brought up a little bit about what's the movie? Doctor Strange.
Yes.
About that intro scene and how you identified some of the good and the bad of the scene. I don't know how well you remembered off the top of your head, but I'd be interested to hear in terms of like what you can remember and of what was good and what wasn't.
Yeah. So of what I can remember, because we were also having some wine that night, is so the way Doctor Strange gowns up is pretty accurate, except for the fact that he has a nurse pull up the mask. Like that would already be done up before he started scrubbing his hands.
Oh, true.
But the thing is that unless it's been like a trauma or an actual like emergency, I've never seen a surgeon scrub themselves in. They always wait for someone there to gown them up, to give them a little towel to dry their hands and to gown them up.
Nice.
And then I remember later at some point, they're like actively operating and somebody doesn't have their surgical mask up. And I'm just like, oh my God. And then, you know how the big climax is he's getting the bullet out of this lady's brain so she doesn't have to become an organ donor, which we can talk about later because that's my job now.
Oh.
But if that were to occur, the position it was in her brain, she would have been positioned on the bed differently because they would have been able to access the bullet more directly. But also, he wouldn't have been doing it under X-ray guidance. If anything, he would have been using stealth navigation to do it.
What is that?
So stealth navigation is super cool technology that they can use in the OR where they have these, like, they're basically like landmarkers that they put these shiny little balls on, and then they attach them to the instruments that the surgeon's going to use to put the screws and the plates in. And then they, at a certain point before they get started doing the actual spine work, they take a CT scan in the OR, and then they upload that into a program that turns it 3D. And so between the programming and the connection with these tiny little reflective balls on the instruments, they're able to navigate and see the patient's anatomy like on a screen, so they can see all three planes that they're working in at the same time, so they can get optimal placement of the screws.
Science.
Yeah. But like
I'm blown away.
It was initially created from my understanding. Again, I'm no expert. I'm just kind of general knowledge on everything. From my understanding, it was created for spine surgeries, but they've actually expanded it now. So like they can use it for cranial surgeries, or they are actually starting to use it in thoracic surgery. So they can like take biopsies they can take biopsies of a person's lung mass potentially through their trachea instead of having to do a full surgery.
Whoa. I like to hear how technology's been helping with, in the process of saving or helping people's lives in hospitals. Because a lot of this, it's either what I've seen on TV or what I assume may happen in those rooms. But to hear like what cool stuff, from a layman like myself, it's like, that sounds so cool. Which is like
the first time I ever saw stealth navigation, I had gone from so directly out of school, I had gone to a rural hospital. It was 3 ORs, 24 beds, which is small. And I went out there for the wrong reasons. It was an awful experience, but I did learn. I did learn a lot.
That's
it just
good.
wasn't the things I thought I was going to learn. But then I went from that immediately to that level 1 trauma transplant center. And so that is where I got like my exposure to all the cool things. Like I got to see the stealth navigation for the first time ever. I got to see robotics. I got to like, there's this cancer surgery that they do. It's kind of a last defense treatment situation. But basically what they go in is they go into your abdomen and take out as much tumorous cells as they can get. And then they will instill chemotherapy. Like they'll put some tubing into the patient's abdomen, close the patient up, and then they will instill chemotherapy through their abdomen for a while. I can't remember how long it's for. It's at least a couple of hours. And then they'll drain it all out, rinse everything out, kind of do some last dissection of anything that they may be able to find, and then close up. And it's basically just, an effort to get as much out to help, or from my understanding, to help radiation and chemotherapy be a little bit more effective in end stages of cancer so that people can get to weddings or things like that.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, like very, very stressful and situation, but
very long surgeries.
I bet.
Like,
what's the longest one? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're totally fine. Those surgeries I haven't ever actually scrubbed myself. I've gone in to give like breaks to my coworkers, but I haven't ever done one myself. But for me personally, the single longest surgery I've ever scrubbed was about 14 hours. It was a heart transplant.
Woo!
But on the other side of that, the shortest surgery or the shortest transplant I ever scrubbed was just under 4 hours.
Okay.
Transplants are so wild. Yeah,
I was just thinking that of like, it's just kind of nutty that's, maybe you could just put a new one in there and it'll stick. Maybe it won't. Who knows?
Right.
That's just so nutty.
I know. Science is so cool.
Science. What was it? So with being in this profession and my brain keeps jumping into other medias that I understand, you're familiar with Amateur Surgeon series of games?
No.
By chance?
I'm not really a gamer, actually.
That's totally fine. I think it would give you anxiety. I always thought it was fun because it's like that. I don't know if you're familiar with the term low poly type style of art, where it just looks really cartoony. But you're just a guy who's an amateur surgeon, and you're in these weird situations where like you're in the back of an ambulance and you just got to really quickly give this guy a transplant all by yourself. And you really just take a hammer.
Where's the organ coming from?
It was just in a little container in there.
Oh, okay.
And you open him up, you take a hammer, you break his ribs, you move the ribs out of the way. Everything's flying around the place. Nothing's organized. And then you take a little scalpel and you just pop the new one in there, and then you just throw the skin back on top and you win.
I mean, it sounds like a messier version of what a heart transplant is.
Hey, yo.
Honestly, heart transplants are my second favorite surgery to scrub. And they're like, once I got over the brain block of like, oh my God, you're scrubbing a heart transplant surgery. Like once I got over that brain block, it's actually, the process is I shouldn't say the process. It's a difficult process, but like the steps involved in the surgery, if you look at just the step by step, it's very easy. It's 5 anastomoses. Like you just dissect to get the old heart out, and then you sew the new one in with 5 anastomoses, and then you just make sure there's no bleeding and close up. Again, very generalized.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting when I talk about my experience with heart surgery, because I scrubbed heart surgery and vascular primarily for 5 years. And like, so it's just a normal thing for me now. And so like talking to other people about it, I'm like, they probably think I'm insane because I talk about it so casually.
No, I think it's the coolest thing. It's like you immediately get like 300 points on the coolness factor when you're just like, yeah, I've seen the insides of people's all day. No biggie. And
Okay, so
we just put a new heart in there. No biggie.
Wait, how many points do I get added if I tell you that I've held a beating heart in my hands?
You get 800 points.
Yes. Over 1,000.
Over 9,000. No, actually, if you might find this cool, you might not, but bear with me. My mom and my dad, when my mom was pregnant with me, 27 years ago, maybe 28 years ago. I don't know. Math is weird. They were the people who, like, say if somebody passed away, they went and picked up the body and took it wherever it needed to go.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And so it was her, my dad, and their friend. And so one time it was a very tall person. My mom described him as like somebody who could be a basketball player. Just a very, very tall guy. And so they got him loaded up. And of course, this is a story told around me when I was a kid. So I probably, just breezed through a lot of details.
Probably.
But they got him loaded in.
I thought the story was going to be about having to get like a super tall person in the back of the hearse. And I was about to be like, oh my God.
Well, that's part of it because he was too long. And so, I don't know what gender this person was, but we're just go with he for now. So my mom's in the back with the cadaver. And I guess my dad hit the brakes too hard or something. And she ended up having his brain in her hands.
Yeah.
And she's like,
yeah.
Oh no.
I've held every organ in the human body.
Hey, yo. Just chilling.
Fun fact.
I don't know if this will get you in trouble, but did you wiggle it a little bit?
Which one?
I don't know. I feel like if I was in that position, I'd just be like,
my tendency is to just kind of like squeeze it a little bit, like to get the feel. Like another thing that makes me sound absolutely insane is a lot of surgeries I've done have been like lobectomies or like wedge biopsies of lungs, and people always look at me really weird when I tell them how it feels. But there's like no other way to describe it. But lungs feel like if you could take pop rocks and put them in like a balloon or something and just like feel them while they're actively popping, if that makes sense.
Why do they do that?
Do you know? Because they have all those little gas bubbles where the exchange takes place so your blood can get oxygenated.
Oh. That's cool.
Yeah. But people always look at me insane when I tell them that, because when they're like observing a surgery like that, and then the piece comes out and I'll tell them, if they're not scrubbed in, I'll tell them to get gloves on and I'll hand it to them and I'll be like, feel this. And then they'll feel it and they'll be like, oh my God, you were right. Like,
you weren't wrong.
I know. I'm like crazy, but I'm not wrong.
I love those. It's my favorite like type of character in any media where it's just like, everyone thinks I'm crazy, but I was right the whole time.
It's so true. Especially when you can just like see it.
Oh yeah. I've seen one set of lungs in high school, and it was, the don't smoke.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And they showed you the lungs that are healthy and the lungs that aren't healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And they, inflated it, and everyone's like, ew. But they didn't let us touch it for good reason. Kids are gross.
Yeah. Also, there's probably some like formaldehyde or something going on in there, and
it did smell bad.
It's not.
Do you remember that?
That's not good for us.
No.
So.
Oh my goodness.
I found out the hard way.
Oh no.
In high school, when we dissected like the fetal pigs in like sophomore biology, at the very last day, we somehow ran out of gloves. But the group of people that I was with, my fetal pig, we were all interested in like medical professions. So we were just like, oh, we're just going to keep doing our work. And so we like manhandled this pig without gloves. And then a couple days, like I can't remember if it was the next day or the day after, like it felt like my like esophagus was like tightening up. And like I ended up going to the doctor and they were like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that.
They shouldn't have let you do that.
Yeah.
What?
So,
this is why we need funding in schools.
This is why we need public school funding.
My high school had a medical program. Not like it was more so like so coming out of high school you could be some sort of I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Like you would have a little extra oomph in going into the medical field, but I don't think you would come out with any sort of certifications, but you would see all these students
it would look
2 or 3 times a week in scrubs. Yeah. I've only been in that building a few times for whatever reason. I was an art kid, so I was I always smelled like acrylic paint, but I do remember seeing like videos on Facebook or something from those kids in that program, but most of the time they were doing CPR or some sort of first aid related stuff with like practice dummies or like little practice babies.
Yes.
But otherwise, I don't think I remember them doing anything to like different than the rest of us in terms of biology dissections.
Yeah. If it was like a school thing, probably maybe not. I don't know. But I remember when I was in high school, I did this. I did this program. I can't remember what it was called, but there was one week every summer we had like, it was basically like a summer camp for nerdy kids who wanted to go into medicine.
Nice.
And so each day we had a different activity. So one day we got to learn how to suture like a pig's foot together or something. Another day we got to dissect a sheep's eye. There was one day we got to go and be part of a fire department drill. We got to be the injured people.
Nice.
So yeah, that's what cool kids are doing in the summer.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Let's see. I feel like you've got a whole like treasure trove of experience that I'm just like, it's like looking at a buffet and you're like, where do I start?
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know what. Give me a specialty. I probably have a story.
Let's see. I know you've worked a lot with hearts, but I'm trying to think of maybe something. Actually, how about this? What was so you've been in the OR for like ever, and you've seen a lot of different surgeries occur. Is there one that was just kind of extraordinary in its own right, like does not happen often, or an uncommon situation for that patient? Like maybe they had a rare condition or
I mean, there's a lot of, working at a trauma transplant center, there's a lot of stuff that you get to do that other people don't. So like, there's these thoracic, they're for thoracic, aortic aneurysms. They're an hours long procedure, like 10 plus hours. And they're just so tedious. But then, like, when you get to the part where you have to be fast, because you have 4 minutes to restore blood flow back, or not 4 minutes, 40 minutes to restore blood flow back to the head. So there's always those, but like one that strikes me that just frustrated me, I guess, is we were, this patient was initially in the OR. They were having a kidney tumor removed, and they were super close to the end of the procedure, like to the end of getting the tumor off of the kidney, when a piece of the tumor broke off and floated up the IVC up into the heart, and was just kind of, it was, so you know how the heart has the 4 chambers, the 2 atriums and the 2 ventricles. It was, this piece was just kind of floating in the right atrium where everything comes back to the heart. And so like we had to, while they're still like working on the abdominal part, getting that closed so we can work, we're getting this open so we can do an emergency surgery to get this tumor chunk out of their heart. But then what made me so mad is I was on call that day. And when we got done getting the chest closed and everything came out fine. There was no chunks of extra tumor in the heart or anything. When we got done, like the patient was perfectly stable to continue on with the rest of the surgery to finish that up and whatnot. They, instead of having the general team come back to finish the abdominal surgery, they made me stay and do it, because now all of a sudden it was a heart patient, even though the chest was closed and they were perfectly stable. I was so mad because, like, what if there would have been an actual heart emergency? There wasn't.
Bruh.
But, like, what if?
Yeah.
So that was one.
That's just, how did that happen? That's crazy. I mean, it's tumors, man.
You can get tumors in your heart, actually. They're called myxomas. And they're like these jelly things. The first time I ever did one, it came out and I was like, that looks like snot. But then I was like, oh my God, because we have a surgical technologist journal, and surgical technologists have to get continuing education in order to keep their certification. And in some states, fun fact, we have to actually get more continuing education certification units than nurses do. Fun fact. I don't know about all states, but that's true in the state of Nebraska. Nurses only have to get 20 continuing education credits every 2 years, and we have to get 30. So, yeah.
I wonder what there's a lot of things where, you know, from my perspective, I'm like, hi, goodbye, Craig.
Rude.
What
a douchebag.
We weren't rude enough. I don't think the general public knows about our rudeness to Craig. I'm going to leave it a mystery.
It's like a fun little surprise for people.
It is. What was I thinking about? Oh, there's a lot of things that, like, you know, from the perspective outside looking in, where it's like, that seems ridiculous. And I'm like, I'm hoping there's a good reason for it. But I also know that there's like laws in this country and around the world that are just stupid. So,
well, and it's not like so surgical technologists don't have to register in most states. So, like, we just have the national certification. There's no, like, reporting system or anything for us. Like, if anything were to happen, and things happened in multiple states that could have been contained to one state if we had a reporting system.
Is there like one of those what's the word when you sign a petition? Is there a petition to get that corrected?
Where AST is working on it, but that requires lobbying, and lobbying requires money, and AORN has more money than we do, so they keep shooting them, and hospital associations keep trying to get our registration knocked back, because then they're going to have a harder time finding staff And I would hope that they would pay people more, so they also don't want to do that. Capitalism and then healthcare.
Capitalism.
And healthcare.
I do want to put it on the record that even though I do work in finance, I am very anti-capitalist. So I'm sitting here and I'm like bubbling of just like, hospitals need to stop being big businesses.
Listen, here's disclaimer. This is my own personal opinion. I do not stand for surgical technologists everywhere or anyone in healthcare. This is my personal opinion. But I think that healthcare really started like the capitalism crawl. I'm just going to call it that. When they started putting MBAs in the C-suites instead of MDs and RNs. Because
what is it?
The C-suite?
What does those letters mean? What are you said, and there's a whole lot of letters. I didn't know what they meant.
So like a master's of business, a business guy. As the CEO instead of like a doctor or a nurse.
That's fair.
Yeah. And so then then all of a sudden the patients became customers. And then nurses get really low scores because the patients didn't like the treatments they had to go through that were uncomfortable. And so they give the nurse a bad score and then, what could you have done to make this patient stay better? Yeah.
This isn't a hotel. We're keeping them alive.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I've never expected any of even my doctor's visits. I've never expected any of them to be comfortable.
Yeah.
That's nutty.
I'm just saying there's a reason my patients are asleep. It's because I'm just an awkward person. But then I also don't have to deal with all the bullshit of people. Because people are just people.
Now I have to ask, has anybody woken up during surgery while you were working before? Because that would be nutty.
Not accidentally.
Okay, so it was always on purpose?
Yeah. And sometimes like you don't even always go like completely to sleep. Like, because if we're working on your ankle, there's no reason to intubate you if you're a healthy person. So they'll just give you like a nerve block in your leg and then they'll sedate you.
Nice.
Yeah. It's been really interesting hearing some of the things that happen. One time I had a patient tell us all about the dream they were having about unicorns.
I love those kinds of videos where people are all like loopy post like dental surgery.
Those are my favorite.
And they start saying weird shit. Man, God, I've never been sedated. I've never had like a major surgery in my adulthood. I had my adenoids removed when I was little, but I don't remember any of that.
Good. Your anesthesiologist did their job.
Yay. But I can only imagine that if I ever did have to get some sort of anesthesia and Tony had to carry me out of that hospital room, I'm going to be saying the weirdest shit.
It's honestly the way people wake up is such a wild variety. And old people are deceptively strong when they're drugged up. Like one time I was relieving lunch and I had to wait a while because the procedure that I was supposed to go in and give this person lunch to was a combination. It was like an open carotid procedure, but then they were also doing something in the groins percutaneously for vessels and stuff. And when I went in to offer lunch, they were like, we're like an hour from being done. Can you wait? I'm like, yeah, I've got other lunches to give. I'll take my lunch. I'll come back. Great. Mm-hmm. So I come back and they're done. They're getting ready to wake the patient up. And this patient is 90 something. They weigh maybe 100 pounds. They're like a tiny old person. And it took 4 people to hold this person down when they were waking up. And before, like, the anesthesiologist actually had to sedate them so they could get up to the floor. to recover, but we had to hold them down because of the nature of the surgeries they had. If they got too excited, they were potentially going to pop open vessels and start bleeding. And so like they had to be very still.
Oh my gosh.
But like it took 4 of us to hold this person down. And like I was literally laying across this patient's legs and they were still like bucking up. It is absolutely wild.
You know, I don't know if that's a fight or flight. You know how you get like you can lift up a car in emergencies or something like that?
100%. I'm sure that's what it is. Plus, here's a fun fact about anesthesia. The last sense to go and the first sense to come back when you're like going to sleep and waking up is your hearing.
Mm. Oh, that indirectly reminded me of something that I watched on Netflix like a couple years ago, and I can put a pin in that if you have a few things you need to finish up before I drag us into a whole different department.
I honestly don't even remember how that conversation started. So let's do this.
So I'm going to preface this with I've been in a very like hippy dippy department of friends for a good chunk of my adult life. So even though I myself am not very religious, I'm very, just easy breezy, just kind of living life. I'm very fascinated with different like perspectives that people have. And there was this Netflix show that all my friends at the time were like, you have to see this, because they all did DMT. So they were like, this is the same shit we see when we're on DMT. And I'm like, okay. But it is about what people experience in when they die. So like it's from all these, they interviewed these people who have died, like pronounced dead, but were revived in one way or another, and talked about what their experiences were while they were deceased.
Interesting.
And it was like one of those, it was a very documentary type situation. So I can't say what credibility it had. I can't even remember what it was called, but there was this one lady who was talking about how she was in surgery actively and she died. She died. But she could recall everything she saw from her spirit floating in the OR. And they were like, you're fibbing. You're fibbing. No way. You watched a lot of Grey's Anatomy. And she's like, no, I remember everything they said. I remember all the tools they used. And she like described them. And they were like, yo, like these are new tools. Like how she couldn't have known about these.
Oh,
that's crazy. So it was just really neat. And so when you said the hearing is the last thing to go and the first thing to come back, it reminded me of like the lady describing her experience, being a little soul floating up in the room and watching everything happen and all the things they said and stuff. And so there was so many more experiences in that documentary, but it was also very deep. Like they talked a lot about death from the experiences of the person who died and the people around them and how it changed their lives and so on and so forth. So it was very heavy in a good way, in a therapeutic way.
Yeah.
But I wasn't ready to finish the show because it was heavy.
No, I totally get that.
So I guess is that an appropriate question to ask is, has anybody died while you were on the clock?
Yes.
I'm sure it's not an easy thing, so we don't have to dig into it if it's not what you want to talk about. But
no, you're totally fine. I have had a couple patients pass away. One of them was mine directly. The other one, I just heard the call for the code blue, and I went in to go help. And I scrubbed in to do chest compressions. And it's never an easy thing. Technically, I've had 3.
okay.
But one of them was a C-section for fetal demise, so I don't know if that technically counts because they were healthy. Anyway, what was I saying?
Oh, you've had 2, maybe technically 3 on your experiences.
Yeah, and it's just it sucks. The first one that I had, what didn't happen until 2021. So like, I mean, several years into my career, and it was definitely like a shock. But luckily,
yeah,
I don't know if I should say luckily for me, the nurses that were in my room had experience with it before. So they were able to help me through the process and whatnot. But we do our best to not have that happen. Just that way we can get the family to, last goodbyes and whatnot.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Ooh.
And
there's go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say one doctor I worked with, we had a patient who was not going to make it. We were able to get them back up to the floor so their family could say goodbye as they were passing. But we were we had to do CPR because we were doing a TAVR. It's a minimally invasive aortic valve replacement where they do it all through the vascular system instead of any incisions or anything. It's very cool. It's very cool.
That is very cool.
But it had failed and they were placing in another device so we could get them back to their family. And so we do this in a hybrid room that has x-rays running so they can see where the things are tracking through the vessels. And so we're performing CPR, which is already absolutely exhausting on its own, but we're also wearing like 40 pounds of lead to protect us from the x-rays. And so
I forgot x-rays are bad too.
Yeah. And so that evening, the surgeon had actually texted all of us, thanking us for being in the room and like for making it happen so that the patient could get their family to say goodbye. And she was basically just like, she's like, it always sucks, but I'm glad that I had such a great team. And like that really meant a lot to me. And then like my very first one, which is the one that may or may not count, like I said, was a C-section for fetal demise. And the next day, actually, me and the circulating nurse and the surgeon and the anesthesiologist all went and we did a debrief with like a hospital counselor. So we were able to, talk through that process. And it was pretty cool because like the next C-section that I ended up doing at that hospital was with the same doctor. And it was during the day and it was a scheduled C-section and everything. And like we had a med student and it went perfectly fine. But like the moment that the doctor pulled the baby out, like we both kind of just like looked at each other and like she did all of the checks and like the baby was perfectly fine. The baby was screaming, but like we just kind of looked at each other and like we just kind of had that breath together. And then the student actually noticed and the doctor's like, oh, well, this happened. And so we're just kind of like, it's that first one past that bad case. So as much as I hate to say it, all of my our deaths have been good experiences in the way that they weren't, super traumatic for everyone in the OR. And I don't know how to end this. Like, cause it sounds like I'm like not taking into account the traumatic of the death for the family, but like, that's not at all what I'm trying to do.
Working in an industry where you constantly have life and death, working in tandem, constantly trying to fight for one and fight against the other, or, whatever the case may be, like you, in saying, you as in like the medical professionals in any department, like your role is so crucial, but also like your mental health in these processes are crucial, like, because yes, it's absolutely like hearts go out to those families, those individuals, like it's very tragic, but for the medical professionals, that's intense, especially if that's something you do daily for a living, that can be a lot. So I'm glad to hear that you have those resources and you have good coworkers around you to support each other and work through these things together so you can continue to, fight the good fight and save people as best you can and so on and so forth. Like, whew,
Oh,
I
absolutely. And like,
couldn't imagine.
I want to make it clear that like those types of situations in the OR are very, very much the exception. Like I said, I scrubbed hearts and vascular for 5 years, and the amount of true emergencies that I can remember happening, I can probably count on one hand, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And the heart rooms are such a controlled environment anyway, that when a situation does arise, like it's not even that as much of an emergency as it could be, if that makes sense.
It's handled
like if
it's handled well.
Yeah. Like, and we're already kind of in the perfect environment for it to happen. Cause like, if anything's going to happen, usually it's when we're trying to get the patient off of the bypass pump. And so like the cannulas are still in their heart and to deliver the blood. So if something does happen, we can just turn the pump back on to support them instead of, literally risking their life by trying to make them do it themselves. So
true. If you're going to do it anywhere, this is the place to do it.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Whew.
But yeah,
you have such great, like, this is one of the things I love about, one, being human in society, and two, having this podcast, is that I get to like learn about other people's experiences and what they get to do and what they're passionate about. So this has been incredible. Like, I'm just blown away right now.
Well, like even from like the time that I started scrubbing as a student to when I was scrubbing professionally, like myself as a practitioner, my views changed, and they just continue to change even. And now like with what I do is so completely different from normal, what I call the normal OR now, that like my perspective on like literally life has completely changed. And I'm much more open about death and stuff because we have to be. Like,
absolutely.
That's one thing that's lacking in our society, is like talking about death, because it sucks and it's a painful process for everyone, but it happens to everyone. And
it does.
It can literally happen at any time, and there's just not enough people that are prepared.
No.
And I see that way too much now. And it's just so sad.
It's, if I may relate to you for one moment, I specifically work in retirement finance. So I help people with that end stretch, that the last 8,000 days, if you will, of retirement. And one of the biggest conversations that a lot of people, married couples or single people or families with intergenerational wealth, is that really awkward conversation of, what do you want to happen after you die? Where do you want your stuff to go? How do you want it to go? It's usually, a lot of people kind of already have an idea. They're like, yeah, I want my kids to split it evenly, or, I want this to go in this place. But there's a lot of people where we take it a step farther, and it's just like, okay, do you have your will set up? Do you have your gravestones? Are you getting cremated? Do you have a do not resuscitate? Like, do you have your all these different?
Do you have your living will? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, all that stuff, and they're just not, a lot of time, not ready for that conversation, because that's recognizing their end, and they don't really want to talk about it. So we usually like baby gloves. Like, this is something we're gonna have to talk about.
Yes.
And then a little while later, it's like, did you talk to your family? Are you ready? You ready for this?
Yeah. Absolutely.
At some point, because we just had a client of ours pass away yesterday, and we've been, working with her family and trying to make sure that they're set up, because as much as, it might just be money to a lot of people, it's just a piece of paper that has value, but it could mean the world to their family members, making sure
absolutely
the survivors are taken care of, so on and so forth. But yeah, it should be something that people talk about more often, because it's going to happen.
Absolutely. And especially
unless you're a vampire.
I've been thinking about it a lot lately, because I don't have any of my paperwork or anything done up.
Me neither.
I know. But I've been thinking about how I need to like figure out who I'm gonna have as my power of attorney and stuff. And going through all of my friends, because like obviously my father right now is going to be my decision maker because he's alive, but not forever. And so I'm trying to figure out like which of my friends I want to ask to, do this massive undertaking for me. And like, I'm having a really hard time because most of my friends are partnered and I'm not. So like they have their partners and then they also have their families. And then I'm like, well, I don't want to put another burden on them. Like, so like, it's something that people need to talk about, but they don't. And again, like I said, I see it every day in my job right now. It's so sad sometimes.
It is. Ooh. But then there's the other flip side of I've had a few people that I've known personally or even clients where they're like, I'm ready. Get it over with.
Oh yeah, I've already
get me out of here.
I've already decided like if I get diagnosed with like a terminal illness or something, I'm just gonna like live my life until I can't. And then I'm going to move to Washington State or some other state where assisted suicide is legal and then do that.
I apologize. I scared the crap out of my partner by yelling.
No, you're fine.
But I promised I was listening. I definitely agree with I do think that there should be accessible assisted suicide. Because I know I think for a lot of people, I think I'll put some content warnings in the beginning just in case.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write it down before I forget. But it's something that I've talked about with a lot of my friends. A lot of us have severe mental illness, and there's somebody I remember who was like, if you want to remove yourself from this world, that makes you an asshole because you take you from the rest of us. And I'm like, no, that makes you the asshole.
You can't live your life for other people.
No.
But also, everyone deserves to die with dignity, and that includes to me, that includes when and where and how.
Getting to have that decision that's yours, like I find that to be empowering, and
I feel like it makes things less scary.
Yeah, and then what do you call it? Or to make it easy, like instead of it being a scary decision all on your own, in a not ideal manner, it's like now it's safe and discussed, and
you can have your family with you, your friends. Yeah, absolutely.
We should. Now that's a petition I want. Put it everywhere.
Let's do this.
Yeah, no, definitely. Making death a not as scary discussion all around. Even my mom, when it came to, she's got everything set, ready to go. She's got it all. Every time she goes on a plane, she's like, by the way, I've made it into a scavenger hunt. You got to go to talk to this person, talk to that person. You'll get 2 halves of the key to get to the rest of the stuff. But that's if the plane crashes. I'm like, Mom, no.
See, here, my dad was the opposite. One day I was visiting in his house and he's like, oh, come here. I want to show you something. And then he digs out a box from under his bed and he opens it and he's like, all right, so here's my will. Here's like all of it. And I was like, okay.
Yo.
What? Why? What did I say to bring this on? But yeah, but talking to your family also includes organ donation.
Yes.
Because because people don't talk about that.
No.
And that if your family doesn't know about it, that can be very dramatic and traumatic to them when you pass away.
That was, I have 2 things in relation to that. One, I remember seeing that on my dad's driver's license for the first time and being like, how you still need those. Why would you give them away? And that's when he explained to me the purpose. And I was like, oh, and that was a really wild thought process to go on and like being 6 or 7 years old.
I bet.
But later on, down the road, it was like, that makes a lot more sense because I've, had friends or friends with partners, husbands, wives, etc., who needed an organ donation. I had a coworker who had it all over the back of her car of if you have this blood type and you don't need that other kidney, my husband could use it. And so it kind of came full circle for me 20 years, not 20 years, 15 years later of like,
See,
it is more important than I thought.
Yes. And it's probably still more important than you think. Because out of every 1,000 reportable deaths to an organ procurement organization, only 3 of them actually make it to the OR to donate. Yeah. So it's even more important than you think.
Yeah.
But also there are ways that you can be a living donor because, like you said, you only need 1 kidney. And
I only need 1. They
can actually take just a segment of your liver because it will regrow itself. So you can
that sounds cool.
Be a living liver donor as well. That is much less rare from my understanding. But my last day of clinicals in surgical technology school before I graduated with my degree, my classmate got the living donor surgery, and I got the recipient of the kidney surgery. And I'll never forget this. This is one of my favorite stories to tell. So I am scrubbed into the surgery, but I am not doing anything. I am just standing there looking and not touching. And in the OR, they have a third table. Like the surgical technologist has a table for their instruments and everything. And then they have what is called the Mayo stand. That's like what you see on TV that goes over the bed that has all the instruments on it to hand to the surgeon. And then they have a third table that is done up sterile, has some instruments on it to take care of the kidney. When it comes in, they just clean up the vessels a little bit and all that stuff. And then they had it on ice in a little kidney basin. And so we're sitting there, the surgeon's finishing up the dissection. And then he looks up at me with his loupes. So they're the glasses that have like the magnifiers in them. He looks up at me with his loupes and he goes, "All right, I'll take the kidney now." And I look at my preceptor and she goes, "Get the kidney." So I grab the kidney with 2 hands and I have a death grip on this thing. And so I get back to the Mayo stand and I start handing it to the surgeon. And he was standing a little bit back from the table, which now I recognize was completely on purpose. So I kind of had to reach a little bit. And so he grabs the kidney basin enough that I can feel it. And then he like pretends that like, "Oh no, I've lost grip." But I had a death grip on that kidney because I was not going to be the student that dropped a kidney.
No.
And so the staff have a good chuckle, and then he's sewing it in, and he goes, "All right, what would we do if that happened?" And I was like, "I don't know." And he goes, "We would rinse it off and put it in." I was like, "Oh, okay."
The 5-second rule, I guess.
And now that I work at an OPO, I can tell you that is exactly what happens because I've done it.
Hey, if it's still good, it's still good.
It's still good. 5-second rule applies. And then we just wash it off with some betadine and repackage it. It's still sterile. We rinse off the antibodies. The recipients are on a crap ton of antibiotics and immunosuppressants. And so, it's a process. Like there's a policy for it. Every single OPO has one. Because my boss talked to me about it. He's like, he wanted to make sure I was okay after it happened. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." I genuinely thought I was going to be more upset about it than I was. But I was just like, you know what? At least it happened now. And not because I was still within my first year of working at this OPO. And so I was like, well, at least it happened now and not when I was like 5 years down the road.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't imagine. Oh man.
It's so cool. My job now is so cool. It is
so cool.
Amazing to get the stories from the families, and to just when they do honor walks at hospitals, I am always making sure that I am waiting to get the patient in the OR, because I would just be crying the entire time if I had to do that with the family and everything. And I'm just a super empathetic person, and that's how I choose to protect myself, is not having that family interaction.
I can understand. Like, if someone's crying, I'm crying. If someone's throwing up, I'm throwing up.
Absolutely, 100%.
Oh,
absolutely,
man. You've done so many cool things. So many cool things, so many good things. Thank you for all you do.
It's so wild to think, because like to me it's just like another day in surgery, but then I see all of my friends doing all of their cool things. Like I have a friend who studied for a semester in Japan, and she did some voice acting for an anime over there. She actually has an IMDb credit for a short movie that she was in.
That's cool.
I have another friend who works, she does social services for mentally ill people, helping them get set up with therapists and stuff or treatment. I have another friend who's a robotics engineer. I've got a friend who owns 2 restaurants back in Omaha, Nebraska, and he's actually in a couple of months flying to Tokyo to do like a pop-up at a pretty famous restaurant there. And like, I'm just so proud of all of my friends. And I'm just like, one time I was in a group chat and I was like, I'm just so proud of all you guys. You guys are doing all these amazing things. And like, I'm just like sitting here working in healthcare, and they're like, you're literally getting people organs so they can live longer. And I'm like, well, when you put it that way,
you're cool too, damn it.
Apparently. It's news to me.
I would probably, first I would freak out, and then 2, I would get nauseous, because like I can handle gore, but I think like standing there with it would get to me.
Oh, give me organs all day. If it comes out of a natural orifice, I can't. Like vomit, sputum, anything down below. One time I had a patient, they were having open heart surgery. They had been in the hospital for a week, and on like day 3 or 4, they realized that this patient had pooped. But instead of doing something about it then, for some reason, they decided to give them, I can't remember if it was like a suppository or if it was an enema, the night before open heart surgery. And so I went in there to relieve my coworker, because it was a later surgery. So I was staying on call for a little bit. I go in to relieve my coworker. They're just about done. So we put the dressings on and we take off the drapes. And this patient had a bowel movement. And not just any.
The bowel.
Oh my God.
This patient was minimum 6 foot tall. Maybe 1 or 2 inches more. And they had fecal matter like down to mid-calf. And I had to leave the room or I was going to vomit. I felt
you're valid.
I felt so bad for my coworkers, because they're all in there like getting them cleaned up, and they're like, and I'm just like, I'm sorry. Like, if you don't want to clean up vomit too, like, I need to stay out here.
We're leaving it to one mess, not 2.
Right. And I felt so bad, but they were like, they just made fun of me, but not the first thing I've been.
I'll
made
take
fun.
that.
I mean, it's not the thing that gave me a nickname in the OR, so that's fine. This is actually a really funny story. So when I was working at the trauma transplant center, I got the nickname fibrinogen specifically. But so fibrinogen is a lab value that they can test. I honestly don't know what it is. I don't need to know what it is for my job. So like, whatever. But I was still a baby heart scrub. Like I was off orientation, but I was still within like the first like 6 months of scrubbing hearts. And we're getting towards the end of the surgery, like getting ready to come off the bypass pump. And so the surgeon is talking with the anesthesiologist. Is that noise too loud in the background?
That's fine.
Okay.
I didn't even notice, actually. I was like,
perfect.
What?
So the surgeon's talking to the anesthesiologist and the perfusionist, and I'm getting my stuff ready because we're going to be getting ready to count our stuff, and we're going to be closing at the same time and whatnot. So I'm just organizing my stuff, but I'm still like half listening. That way, if he needs anything, I can get it to him. And all of a sudden, I hear the surgeon say, "Can we get a fibrinogen?" And I just immediately scream out for my circulator. I'm like, "Hey, can I get a fibrinogen?" And like, there's just like a beat of silence in the OR. And then everybody starts laughing. I'm like, what's going on? And then when my coworkers stop laughing enough, they tell me that it's a lab value, not a supply. And then I got called fibrinogen.
That's cute. I love that so much.
It's so funny.
You accidentally found a thing that I can also relate to you on, but it's in food industry. I wanted to be a chef when I grew up, so I worked in a lot of restaurants. So it was artist, chef, and then business school. But there's a lot of restaurants in my area use Roma tomatoes for their stuff, and I didn't know what a Roma tomato was at that point. I don't know how, I just missed it. And so I remember, you're familiar with like the 86 list, like if you're out of something, 86. So I remember my boss had wrote 86 Romas, and I was like, "I'm right here. Are you going to fire me?" And he's like, no, we're out of tomatoes. And I was like, "I'm not a tomato." And so that's where it actually becomes my thing now, where if I guess I have an accent, because I've lived with my voice all my life, I don't hear an accent. But I'll be like, "Hi, my name is Roma," but a lot of people hear Wilma or Rona. And so I go, "Hi, my name is Roma," like the tomato. And instantly they're like, "Ah, yes, I love that."
Nice. I like it.
So it's not nearly as cool as fibrinogen, but relatable.
Another coworker who was in the fibrinogen case, we ended up creating a code Olive Garden. Because one time
breadsticks.
We had a rep come in and give us an in-service, and they brought us lunch or whatever. It was within whatever guidelines they were offered, not gifting things to people and medicine and all that good stuff. But they had brought in Olive Garden, and I didn't eat it because I had brought my lunch that day, and Olive Garden just tears me up anyway. Because I learned this year I have Crohn's, so that's fun.
Hey yo! Yay!
But one of my other coworkers did, and she ended up having to drop everything. She basically got the next step ready. She told the PA what he needed to give the surgeon, and then she bolted because she had to go. Do you know what I mean? After Olive Garden. Yes. So so then this was, I don't know, 3 or 4 months later, I was having issues. And it was early enough that I knew that I had a little bit of time because she was giving lunch. So she happened to be giving lunch that day, and she was in a different room. So I just looked at my circulator, and I told them to call into the room that she was in and have the nurse tell her that I had a code Olive Garden. And apparently, for a hot second, everyone was super confused until it clicked. And then all of a sudden, it became the team code. If someone needed to get out and go to the bathroom, they were like, "I got a code Olive Garden here."
That is beautiful.
So many good stories happen in the OR. It's so fun.
I love to be a fly on the wall. Oh goodness,
so wild. And the funny thing is, at the level 1 center that I worked at, they have their staff in pods. So like there's certain staff members who primarily scrub like general surgeries. There's staff members who primarily scrub heart and vascular. There's staff who primarily do ortho. Like there's a pod for each specialty. And sometimes you'll go to other specialties, but the super interesting thing when I got to the transplant center and I was getting close to the end of my orientation to where I was going to pick my pod, the way they worked it is like you would list your top 3 pods that you wanted to go into, and then they would see what they needed for staff reasons and then put you somewhere. And everyone was telling me, they're like, oh, don't do the heart team. Don't do the heart team. You're going to be working all the time. You're going to be on call all the time. And I'm like, well, I'm single and I'm child free. So like now's the perfect time to do it, first of all. But second of all, the more people on the team, the less call you have to take.
True.
Exactly.
You're cooking.
Yeah. And there was one point we were fully staffed and we were literally on call 1 night a week and 1 weekend a month. And that was it.
They were cooking.
Yeah. But,
that's what I'm talking
and then people
about.
left. And then
it happens.
And then February of 2020, I actually was on call literally half of the month because we were so short staffed.
Yeah.
And in the middle,
it was 2020.
In the middle of that month, well, that was even pre-pandemic 2020.
The very beginning.
And like the best part is that I had because I was a traveler at the time and I had gone back to the hospital. I had left to travel because why not work at the same place for twice as much money? And
true.
In that contract that I had signed, I had a weekend off in February because I was going to go to the, it was the Stadium Series game for the NHL. And it was in Colorado Springs.
Ooh.
It was awesome. And they were like, can you take any days of this weekend? And I was like, no, it's in my contract. And I'm going to be on call literally half the rest of this fucking month. So no. The other traveler can pick up a day because I know she only has 1 weekend.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Snap your fingers in the Z formation.
I have to say, traveling as a surgical tech did a lot for like my confidence and like standing up for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really nice. Along with the
That's good. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't have now. But that's okay because I do really cool stuff.
Exactly. You do really cool stuff. I'm blown away right now. And now
I'm just a big fat nerd. I could talk all day.
Aren't we all just big fat nerds?
Yeah. We are.
You know. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. I was like, but I'm excited. So I'll make other people excited.
Oh, for sure. This is going to be hype.
I did. The one thing that's kind of bad about it is that when I moved to where I live now, I had to have surgery in a hospital where I didn't know anybody. And I didn't know the staff. I didn't know the surgeons. But luckily for my job, I go around to area hospitals and I happened to be at that hospital a couple weeks before my surgery. So I absolutely took the time and talked to some of the staff members. And I was like, hey, what can you tell me about this surgeon? And luckily, they had very lovely things to say. And they were actually all a lot of them were trying to get their own appointments with her. So that made me feel really good. And then I brought treats day up to better up my staff.
And you what?
I brought treats.
Say that again?
The day of my surgery, I brought treats.
That's so wonderful.
Because here's the thing with surgery is that everyone thanks the surgeon. You know, at their post-op visit in the office, they thank the surgeon or the PA, whoever they're visiting. They're like, oh my God, thank you so much. You healed me. But surgery is a team sport. Surgeons could not do what they do without anesthesia. They couldn't do it without the circulating nurses. They couldn't do it without the surgical technologists. They couldn't do it without the care techs who, help us turn over rooms. They couldn't do it without EVS who turn over rooms. And people who do patient transport. Like, it really is a team sport. And so, I just wanted to show my homies some love.
Now I'm wondering if I ever do get surgery for whatever reason, if I should order them food or something.
I mean, they'll always be thankful.
Everyone gets a Starbucks gift card. Thank you.
I mean, I'm serious. I guarantee you they would die of happiness.
Okay.
You
hear that, listeners?
This is also just me being extra, but I wrote each one of my staff members a thank you card. Like, I had one for my anesthesiologist, and I had one for my nurse, and I had one for my surgical technologist.
That's so wonderful. To my anesthesiologist, thank you for knocking me out. In other things.
No, I was like, I think I said specifically, thank you for giving me the good drugs.
Hey.
And it was also really awkward when they came and did like all their pre-op interviews, because they were like, all right, they would, like, the anesthesiologist did a spiel, and he was like, all right, do you have any questions? And I was like, no. He's like, really? I'm like, you sure? And I was like, yeah, I work in surgery. So he was like, oh, okay.
God. Man, that's so fun. Goodness. I'm kind of like, ooh. I get this like fun, like info dump high, if you will, of like, I've learned a thing, and this just gives me so much joy.
Your dopamine high, yeah.
My dopamine, yeah, man, is that what it's been this whole time?
Yeah.
Shit.
And I think that's part of why I love my job too, is because there is such variety that it does give me the dopamine of like new input all the time. And it works out really well with my ADHD. So I remember one time I was in an emergency abdominal aortic aneurysm. And there were 2 attendings and 2 fellows. So like 4 surgeons like actively operating at one time. And there was a couple of residents who were in there just retracting things. So there's lots of hands and lots of supplies and instruments I was passing, and I didn't lose a damn thing. And I was so proud of myself.
Good job.
Whew, so proud of myself. There's also the surgery. I had almost 300 suture needles, and I didn't lose one.
That sounds terrifying.
It was a special case.
Whew. All right, so if I ever need surgery, I'm going to Nebraska. Got it.
Well, I don't live there anymore.
Oh, where are you at now?
I live in Illinois.
Illinois? I'm going to Illinois.
Well, you don't want me in your OR.
No?
But because I work.
Oh, because it's hard.
No, because I work at an organ procurement organization now. So I do organ recoveries. So if you're in my OR, it's not looking good for you.
That's fair. I knew all that information.
But I also threw so much at you.
If the conditions are correct, then I think it would be cool if you procured my organs.
Good to know. Well, and who knows? Maybe someday I will go back to a normal OR. Who knows?
I'm just gonna say.
Maybe. Because, see, I got my current job. And again, this is going to sound crazy because this has become like my normal life. But I got bored with heart surgery because it's such a prescriptive process. Like, it does not matter the patient. If you tell me if we were doing a 4-vessel CABG, I could tell you the exact steps that we needed to do for that 4-vessel CABG. And so after doing it for 5 years, there's not really much more for me to learn, like in the position that I'm in that room. And so I wanted to kind of get out before I started hating my job completely, but I also wanted to still do something medical adjacent. And so I kind of did a Facebook posting being like, hey, I'm looking for a new job. I want to be this like adjacent, but I don't want to scrub right now. Like, what suggestions do you have for me? And a lot of people were like, oh, you could go be a rep. You could go do this. And I was like, oh, yeah. But then one of my friends that I used to scrub hearts with in Nebraska was like, have you thought about doing organ procurement organization? Because he actually left the heart team at Nebraska to work at the OPO in Nebraska. And I was like, you know what? I haven't. And so I literally Googled OPOs in the US. And there was a list. And I was like, I literally went down the list. And I was like, where do I want to live? And I applied to those places. And
so
now
cool.
I have my crazy, amazing job.
You're living your best life. Look at you go.
Just sad because I still haven't gotten to send the heart back to Nebraska yet.
Is that a song reference, or is that just because you were in Nebraska?
Just because I feel like it would be really, because the program I worked at in Nebraska is a transplant program too.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think it would be really fun to get to send a heart back to my old peeps.
It did sound like a like one of those emo mid 2000s kind of jams.
Send a heart back to Nebraska.
So, you know, somewhere in the same like Ohio's for Lovers kind of like vibe.
Oh, absolutely. I can see that.
But Ohio isn't real, so no lovers there.
I don't know. Ohio is a little bit real because I'm also a knitter. I like to knit. And they're one of my favorite yarn dyers. The company is called Dye Mad Yarns.
Nice.
And they're in Ohio. And it's only like a 6-hour drive for me. So like whatever, day trip or a weekend trip, really.
Yeah.
But I need to go there so bad because they have t-shirts that they sell only at the store. And those t-shirts just say gay and high because the store is at the intersection of Gay Street and High Street.
They calculated that shit. Calculated.
It's just like,
and I wish I knew that. I went to Ohio allegedly once.
Allegedly.
So,
well, it's just like if I ever buy a house, there is one house that I want, and that is in Omaha, Nebraska. There is an intersection where it is 69th Street and Cummings Street. I want to buy one of those houses at that intersection.
Man. That's good. That's incredible.
I know.
Somebody's gonna look at your mail and be like, no way.
I would absolutely die if I got to like tell people, if I got to like meet somebody at work or whatever, I'd be like, oh, come on over, I'm having a party. I'll be like, oh, where do you live? I'll be like, I live at 69th and Cummings. What?
The address is 69420 Cumming Way.
If only Nebraska were that cool. If only Nebraska was that cool. That's why I had to leave. So I'm too cool.
I had to leave Nebraska.
I'm too cool for that state.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm stuck here in Florida, so everyone's crazy. This is just my life now.
Hugs for you.
Thank you. Get me out of here.
If you, I have a couch. Do you need a couch crash escape room?
Me, my partner, my 3 cats, my 9-year-old. We're all on our way.
I have a queen size bed, so I'll share with the pets. And you guys can figure out the rest.
Thank you.
I'll take care of the fur babies. You take care of the rest.
They're all big cuddlers. They're all big cuddlers.
Amazing. Charlie makes biscuits every night when we go to bed. Because I've had him
making biscuits.
I've had him since he was like a teeny tiny baby. Here, let me show you a picture.
Oh, whenever the boys make biscuits, it's like, oh, are you making biscuits for the bakery on Saturday? You gotta work overtime to get the biscuits for the bakery.
Cute. I just love it so much. Okay, this is Oh, is it? Oh no, it's not gonna work. Hang on.
Oh, I saw it for like a half a second.
Let me just undo my background.
I promise I won't perceive your background.
It's not much. It's just my kitchen.
It's a kitchen. The little guy.
Like he still had his eyes were still blue, but somebody had found him outside and it was in November. So
it's cold. I
So now
My
he's mine.
boys, they had the blue eyes as well when we got them. They were born on Mother's Day. They were born on the same day as my 9-year-old.
Oh.
But at the time, I didn't create this 9-year-old. This 9-year-old was created without me. And I was their godmother. And so, but years had passed, and then I ended up falling in love with her dad. But that's not here nor there. But it was really wild to put 2 and 2 together. I'm like, wait, all 3 of you were born on Mother's Day in the same year. That makes you triplets.
I love this.
So now they're siblings, and it's very cute.
That's so cute. I love it. Cooper or Charlie used to have a brother, but Cooper did not like traveling. To the point where, like, at my first travel assignment, when we got there, I had to sequester him in his own room for 2 days. And even then, he was still a little bit fighty. So then he's now living with a friend in Omaha, and he has 2 other cats and a 2-story house. So
the good life.
We had a little chat about, we were like, well, do you want to bring it? Do you want him? And I was like, I'm pretty sure Charlie's lonely, but that would also defeat the entire purpose of rehoming him to stick him in a car for 8 more hours. So
yeah, I
get pictures. That's fine.
Pictures. You go, boy. Oh, goodness. I am so happy we got to chat and meet officially today.
Me too.
I'm so excited. I would love to keep talking to you for more hours, but I also have to wake up at 5:30 in the morning.
Yes.
So I need to go night-night.
If you ever want to do this again,
absolutely
part 2 to the podcast, or even just for shits and giggles, I am 100% down.
Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure I was HIPAA compliant on everything I said. So,
do you have any last statements you want to make before we wind down and do outros?
Just if you are going to have surgery, I know there's a lot of details that they tell you. There's a lot of things that they tell you, not to eat, but after a certain time, take all your jewelry out. There's rules for everything, and there's a reason for the rules. So we're doing it all to keep you guys safe. So trust your professionals and just take your jewelry out, please. And don't stick things up your butt that aren't meant for that. If they're sex safe toys, do whatever you want, as long as they're meant for the butt. But don't put things that aren't meant for the butt up the butt. It's real bad.
There's this, I don't know how the algorithm said that I think that you would like this, but there's this EMT, I think.
Badge 502, the guy who shakes his head. I adore that man.
Because there's the one that's like, it won't shatter. It's got a flared base. It's literally designed for this. And he's like, there's 5 different people.
My favorite one. So do you follow the French chocolate guy?
No.
Oh, okay. So there's this French chocolate guy who does just amazing things. He sculpts with chocolate.
I think I might have seen his stuff.
And so I stumbled across the TikTok for his pastry academy. He has a school in Las Vegas. And so obviously I followed. And one day they were showing, I can't remember what the module was, but they were talking about, it was something with cake decorating, I think, because they were talking about how to make frosting roses. And the first thing that they do is make a sugar base for this rose. Except that I know exactly where they got the mold from for that sugar base. And then maybe 2 days later, that guy was shaking his head. When I saw that portion of the Pastry Academy video, I shrieked. I was like, oh my God, that is not a rose petal.
I have to find this video.
I'm sure I could send it to you.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. Thank Thank you again for your time
Of
and your
course.
experience and the laughs. This is so good.
Thank you for
oh my goodness.
listening to me ramble on. And this is the first.
It's an honor.
There's been a couple of times when I've been about to be like, sorry for rambling, but then I'm like, no, that's the whole point.
That's the whole point.
That's what I get to be a nerd, and I don't care if other people want me to or not.
I'm putting you on a stage, and everyone is like,
Do it.
oh my goodness. Speaking of stage, where can people find you on the internet if they want to talk to you more about what you do?
Well, I mean, publicly, TikTok is about it.
Okay.
My Facebook and my Instagram are pretty locked down. I don't
That's
accept
valid.
friends of people I don't know.
Totally valid.
But my TikTok username is DottieJ06. Very exciting.
Mm-hmm. And then also in the Discord here, we have in the Hyperfixation Season 4, you will see the Surgical Technologist Week thread. So people will go in there and chat about the episode. And so if you wanted to ask questions or whatever, that's a good spot to drop in.
Oh, absolutely.
In the Discord.
I would love to answer questions. And not many people know about my profession, so I'm happy to shout it out.
Yeah.
I will have so I
That's
will
okay.
forget. I will forget about the Discord.
So I'll give you a little shout.
Okay.
Be like,
yeah.
Her.
Perfect.
Cool beans.
Yeah.
And then I know a lot of the times there's like not a lot of the times, but sometimes there may be like some sort of special event or charity or something going on with weeks like Surgical Technologist Week. Is there anything that you wanted to shout out on that front or off the top of your dome? And if not now, we can throw it in when the episode's announced.
No, I mean, there's not really usually anything public for Surgical Tech Week because the public doesn't really know. But if you are a nurse who works in the OR, or if you know someone who is a surgical technologist, just give them some treats or thank them for what they do, because Lord knows the hospitals aren't going to do anything. There was 2 years I was a traveler. I ended up being at the same hospital for Surg Tech Week 2 years in a row, and the hospital didn't do anything. And I made little mugs with like some lotion and like mints and stuff for like to keep in our lockers for my coworkers so that we would get something, because nurses get all the recognition again. They get so many weeks and we get one.
Celebrate my week.
How does Surg
I do so much. Oh my goodness. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun. I'm glad we got to do this.
Yeah.
You can find me, the host of this episode, Romi Baloney, at I Appreciate Your Butt at the twitter.com. That is IAPPRECI, the number 8, BRUTT. And you can find me there at Twitter or X, whatever they call it now, Tumblr, TikTok, you name it. But, this podcast wouldn't be possible without the Moonshot Network. You can find the Moonshot Network at twitter.com/moonshotpods. You can see what we're doing live at moonshot.mov or moonshot.mov. Or check out our website. You can go to moonshotpods.com and see all the things that we're doing. And you can support the network directly at patreon.com/Moonshot Network. Or if you want to support this podcast directly, if you know what I mean, you can find us at patreon.com/The Hyperfixation, where for as little as $1 a month, you too can get episodes early. And you know what? You know who gets those episodes early? Our current patrons. Our current patrons for this episode, as of this time in place in society, in the universe, is first up, Flo. And then we got Hate Skin, Becky Scott Fairley, and Ver. Those 4 patrons carry this podcast on their back. Those 4 patrons love us so much. And you know what? you can help them out. You can help them carry this gigantic podcast with our long-ass episodes. You can help us keep this podcast going by going to our Patreon. I would love you forever, and I will announce your name at the end of every episode. Please and thank you. Also, we might be dropping merch. So if you want some merch, check out the Redbubble. Let me get that for you, actually. Yeah, if you go to Redbubble and search the Hyperfix Pod, you will find our store where you can get our stuff on things. Is that crazy? Our stuff on stuff? That's crazy. But yeah, check out the Hyperfix Pod on Redbubble or Patreon, and you can find yourself some interesting ways to support the podcast. And I also want to thank Offuscate, that is Ofuscate, for our intro and outro music. So if you're looking for some podcast intro and outro music, check out their work. They're on SoundCloud, Instagram, and Twitter. And thank you to our editor. Thank you to Kingdom. You can find Kingdom at twitter.com/Tachyon Kingdom. Kingdom slaved over this episode and many of our episodes. So please give Kingdom a big thank you. Let's get back to that episode outro that I didn't record in advance or in the future.
Let's see. You've had so much words of wisdom. But usually at the end, I'll be like, be safe, drink your water, don't die, take your vitamins, and badoop. So I don't know if you have any like wacky, like, oh, you said,
I do.
Take your jewelry out before surgery.
Wait, there's another one. Clean.
I'm ready.
Your damn belly buttons.
There's so many people right now that are like, oh, like checking their belly buttons right now.
Clean your damn belly buttons. That's all I gotta say.
The orifice you forgot about. Clean it out.
Take a Q-tip and maybe some alcohol, swirl one end, dry it out with the other. Call it a day.
You
The
know,
things I've
that's
seen.
going in. There, you know, the past few years, there's been that big like wash your ass. I feel like that's going in the same department of wash your ass, clean your belly button.
Wash your ass and wash your belly button.
Get the front hole and the back hole. You're set. Shit. That's a good spot to end this.
That's a great spot to end this.
Do you miss getting kicked in the face at Warped Tour?
Did you shatter your glasses in a mosh pit in 2007?
Did you wear more studded belts than a Final Fantasy character?
Then we have the show for you.
We are So Emo I Fell Apart, a podcast about third wave emo, late night live journal updates, burnt hair, and everything in between.
Join us every second Saturday as we examine major moments in the history of emo and keep you updated on current events.
Because it was never a phase.